As we take another few steps into 2018, it's clear that Destiny 2's struggles, and by extension, the mountain of issues facing Bungie and Activision, are by no means over. And it's looking like 2018 is going to be the most difficult year for the Destiny franchise on the whole. In this video, I wanted to talk about a report from a leading financial analyst, Cohen. So the Cohen Group is a financial services company and analyst who have quite a bit of weight in the financial industry in general. And they posted a report about Destiny 2 struggling and how they predict, financially in particular, the game is going to continue to suffer. Although it is worth mentioning that this is primarily financial stuff, so the stuff that they're saying doesn't necessarily mean that, the game is just going to go away or that we're not going to get content or anything like that, but these things are certainly linked. And it's pretty interesting because, we've had a lot of conversations ourselves in the community as players with our issues in the game, but this report gives a much more kind of industry-wide and financial perspective on the issues. So the report basically says that player interest in Destiny 2 is dropping, which is going to hurt the game publisher's add-on revenue this year. The report cited increased evidence of players leaving the Destiny 2 community, and while Call of Duty World War II clearly had a great holiday, which likely sets up strong franchise live services revenue in 2018, Destiny 2 is struggling with player engagement appearing to be on the wane. And this comes from a report that the analyst wrote in a note to clients on Tuesday entitled "Destiny 2 is not in a good place." They confirmed that the $66 target price for Activision Blizzard shares was representing a 7% downside on Monday's close, so that's actually a drop in the shares. And the report said that several Destiny video streamers have announced they will reduce content for the game in the future, and he noted that Twitch viewership for the game is at a franchise low level, averaging 4,000 to 7,000 viewers on Friday afternoons versus 14,000 to 17,000 for Destiny 1 just 1 year ago. And this leading analyst lists the 4 key reasons that they believe the game is faltering. So number 1, design decisions were made that have made the game less engaging, less distinctive than it was in D1. In particular, key aspects of the D2 endgame feel neutered in comparison to Destiny 1. Number 2, microtransaction implementation, while not nearly as problematic as in Star Wars Battlefront 2, has been a source for player unhappiness. Number 3, Bungie's apparent urgency in responding to player feedback has been disappointing. And number 4, until recently, Bungie did a poor job of communicating its roadmap going forward, particularly compared to the more open stance of many other live game services. So incredibly interesting that the analyst, is saying this stuff about the game. It demonstrates that the financial indications, are saying exactly the same things as what we are seeing in the community as players of the game. And the important thing about this is that, we can talk, we can have our feedback and everything like that, but of course, if Bungie, Activision continue to make a ton of money off Destiny, our feedback becomes, less and less important. However, if the game is really suffering, like what this report is saying, then it means that as a developer, they're left with very little choice but to try and appease the community and, kind of recuperate some of the player base. However, as a result, the analyst does say that they're not optimistic that the company will be able to turn the franchise around. We do think that Bungie still has some opportunity to fix the game's problems over the next year and recapture engagement, but we're not sure they have the ability to pull it off at this point. We also note that Destiny currently has more serious competition in its genre from a refurbished Division from Ubisoft and the indie title Warframe than it did 3 years ago when Destiny 1 had its own share of player dissatisfaction. So they're actually talking about industry competition there and how Bungie are in a less advantageous position than they were when they had Destiny 1 because of course that was a new game, there was less kind of actual genre competition at the time. So like I said, it's very interesting to see a big financial analyst, report on essentially the same things that the community has reported on, and even to highlight the same kind of issues with the way that Bungie have been handling feedback. Also, on top of the player dissatisfaction around microtransactions, Bungie have actually said that they're going to be changing many of the systems to make the loot easier to obtain, and this is going to have a financial effect on Bungie because, their implemented system with these microtransactions is essentially changing now. Whatever they predicted they'd be able to make is definitely not going to be met under these current circumstances. Another thing to point out is that Activision will have their quarterly earnings call in February, and they'll talk about the last quarter of 2017. So we'll see some, initial results from Destiny 2, but then it will kind of lead into the expansion, sales for the DLC, and also the microtransaction revenue. And those main points made by Cohen about design decisions, microtransactions, the apparent urgency of, player feedback response and communication, all of these are the kinds of things that Bungie will be called out on, by the investors. So that conference call is going to be very, very interesting. But what does this all really mean for the franchise? Well, it means that they're set to make considerably less money over the next year than what they were predicting to make, and potentially what they've made in the past as well. That much is kind of obvious at this point. Does that mean that content for us is actually going to suffer? Well, probably not, because Bungie are going to be responsible for, like I said, recuperating as many players as possible. They're going to have to listen to the player feedback. They're going to have to deliver content that is excellent in order, to fix these issues. And that is regardless of the financial element. Destiny is too big of a franchise to just scrap, And the point that we're in right now, especially for those companies, this is essentially an emergency situation with this franchise. So with that in mind, and of course content for us as players, what can we expect in 2018? Well, we've got updates, in January, we've got more stuff in February. There are going to be changes to mods, additions to the raid, and for people currently playing the game, I think those are going to be, somewhat impactful, positive additions to the game. They're not going to, turn it on its head, but they are a beginning. We've also heard about more updates inside of Season 3. We're also going to be getting a DLC in the spring of this year. But of course, the thing about that is that Bungie cannot afford to deliver another DLC like the last one, We're going to have to see really good content and a lot of systematic changes and additions to the game. And my fear there is that because, they're focusing on updates now and in February, sandbox additions, as well as private matches and ranked PvP inside of Season 3, if they're putting effort into those things, which they should be because we want them as players, then I'm kind of concerned about how many systematic changes are going to come alongside the DLC and the impression that that's going to give, regardless of how good it actually is, right? Because that's a big part of the problem now. They can improve the game objectively for us who are still playing, but how are they going to make the game look like a good game on the outside now? That's the challenge. But on top of the spring DLC and the fact that it has to deliver, they're probably going to have to launch a September DLC just like the Taken King we certainly expected as players, and that is also going to have to bring huge systematic changes as well as large amounts of content for the game. And of course, all of this is happening when morale is probably at an all-time low inside of the studio, and financially they're being hit with a ton of bricks. Versus what they were planning to make from Destiny 2, I'd imagine they've lost a very substantial amount of money at this point and are set to continue to lose money going forward. Regardless of that though, their only hope for the franchise is to make a ton of new content. So they're definitely going to be out of pocket. Development constraints, the studio in general, I would imagine are going to have a pretty hard time, and just imagine the conversations going on between Bungie and Activision right now. Either way, inside of this video, I just wanted to deliver that information to you guys. Obviously, like I said, we have our own issues and problems and all of these conversations, and I feel like you guys deserve to know about this report. While the report itself is pretty negative, I wouldn't necessarily take it as a huge negative as a player of Destiny 2, because like I said, they have to try and recuperate this franchise. It's just too big to allow it to, completely collapse and fail. They at least have to make a bloody good go of it, and that will probably mean some pretty good content for us who are still playing, but like I said, it doesn't necessarily bring people back to the game. What do you guys think? I think there are a margin of people who will come back, for the spring DLC or even the September DLC if the changes look good enough, but I think there are also people who are just burnt at this point, and it's going to be very difficult to encourage them back. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section, guys. Certainly makes for another negative subject in this video, but this isn't a matter of opinion, this is a matter of fact. This is happening, so it's going to have to be addressed in one way or another, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. But if you have found the video insightful or interesting, a rating below is very much appreciated. If you're new to the channel and you want to see more Destiny 2 content going forward, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But for now, I appreciate you watching and I hope you have an awesome day.